Nothing in life is linear, and that includes our education and employment journey. Whether you earned your GED as an adult, decided a four-year college wasn't the right path for you, or you're looking to employ a talent pool of competent candidates eager to join the workforce, you've come to the right place. Join me for Education Unplugged, where I can talk to learners, educators, and employers looking to destigmatize the educational road less traveled. We're here to make a positive impact today and for generations to come. It only takes one person to invest and connect with a learner for their belief in themselves to transform the future. From test taker to change maker, we're here sharing the stories of people who have taken a non-traditional path to a better life. Welcome to Education Unplugged. I'm Vicki Greene, and I'm honored today to be with Michael Horn, who is the author, public speaker, and advocate for the future of education. Michael works tirelessly to improve the lives of each learner through education. Michael, welcome to Education Unplugged, and thank you for being here today. I would love to start with you just giving a background of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got started in the world of education in 2006 when I graduated from Harvard Business School. And a professor there, Clay Christensen, just transformed my life when he had this opportunity. Well, first through his teaching, the theories just of innovation just opened up my eyes about how the world works. And then we founded the Clayton Christensen Institute, a nonprofit think tank together. I ran the education team there for about a decade. I've written several books on the future of education. I teach at the Harvard Graduate School of Education and sort of work with a portfolio of organizations in my writing and speaking and advising. And across K-12, I should say, higher ed, and then my next book is called Job Moves, 9 Steps for Making Progress in Your Career. So I guess focusing on the next step, right, outside of the formal education system of how people navigate their careers.
Yeah, it was fun. I had a lot of fun researching you and all the things that you write about, what you talk about. And what was fascinating for me is that everything that you're talking about, whether it's the K through 12 system, whether it's hiring, skills-based hiring, for me, being the leader of GED, I couldn't help but recognize that everything that you're doing really sits at the center of the adult learner. And when I say that, I look at the 40 million adults out there who are lacking a high school diploma, who are also looking at going on to a career path. Many of them want to go on to post-secondary, some kind of post-secondary, whether that's through upskilling, whether that's in a blue collar or a new collar field. And I'd love to get your perspective as individuals out there, learners listening to all the things that you sit at the heart of. How do you think the GED learner sits with all the work that you're doing, knowing that we have 40 million adults out there, knowing that they want a career path, and knowing employers are looking for people?
Yeah. So I guess what I would say up front is it's a pinch me moment for me to talk to you also, because the GED in my mind represents what we really want the future of education to look like, which is not certifying time in seat or that I complied with the state mandates around these things, but really certifying what I know and can do and me showing evidence of it in some way, right? And so from my perspective, once a foundation asked me, well, what percentage of people should have a post-secondary credential? And I was like, 100%, not because they've all gone to college, but because we are literally certifying and saying, yeah, you've mastered the ability to do X, right? Your experience shows you've done Y. And that's sort of my sense of the question, which is rather than looking for signals of, did you complete high school? Did you get this degree? Did you get this diploma? Signals like the GED that say, hey, I can do this. I've worked and I can show that I can accomplish this. And this is how I can contribute to you as a company and your goals. And it fits into my goals as an individual. That to me is the future. And we know that companies, hiring managers say they've got openings. They can't find qualified people for it. This is the perfect way to bridge that in my mind, is to stop looking at the credential and instead look at what you know and can do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's music to my ears, right? That's something that I talk about all the time, is that, again, as a GED learner, they may not have had the typical K through 12 experience. They may have had life circumstances that got in the way. So a lot of our GED learners may have suffered depression, anxiety, may have had a death in the family, had to go back and get a job to help support their family, may have had an undiagnosed learning disability. And so for me, that's one of the things that we talk about all the time in the market is how do we get everyone to see the GED learner the way that I see them? And so when you talk about employers and you talk about all these gaps and you talk about people looking for individuals to hire, how do we start getting employers to actually step up and do it? Everyone's talking and saying, hey, we're going to go and we're going to look at skills and we're going to look at, we're going to go away with, requiring a 4-year degree. What is it that's going to get us as a society, us as leaders working for organizations to really get past that and start looking at the human and looking at other skills other than what's on a resume?
I love the question, and I think the way you just said it is the escape, which is we actually have to ironically get out of our skills centric mindset. I think from the company side, and think of what do people do on a day to day basis in this job who are successful. Literally describe the day in the life, the week in the life. Okay, those are the experiences. What's the evidence that I would want to see that someone could do those things, right? And then the world that you live in, educators, others can say, okay, what are the skills that allow someone to do those experiences? But I think sometimes employers, they get so caught up in like, I'm going to use all the buzz phrases, critical thinking, communication, this, that. They don't know what those mean. Like I can't even define what those mean in some universal way because they don't, right? They're not universal per se, but they're domain specific. And so I think saying to employers, hey, don't worry about like defining what the skills are or figuring out the right assessment, or just tell us like what people who are successful in this role do on a day-to-day basis. And we'll help you find the people that have demonstrated that they can do those things. So that's number one, I would say. And number two, in my mind, we have to find ways to de-risk this for the hiring managers. Because as you know, the CEOs, the CHROs, the CLOs, they come out and they're like, we're going, no longer going degree only hiring. Well, but, kind of like back in the day, you never got fired for buying an IBM computer. It's kind of like, well, I'm not sure. Do I really want to take the risk? I'm going to go with someone that has the diploma or the degree. I think we need to get beyond that mindset and de-risk it by really creating examples of like, no, you're encouraged, you're incentivized. I want to see why you thought that they could do these things, what experiences in their lives suggested that they already can do it, or frankly, that they have the potential to do it. Because that's the other piece of this. We're leaving so much human capital. Like you just talked about all those use cases of why you don't complete high school. We're leaving so much human capital on the sidelines. Do we really think someone who had a mental health challenge doesn't have something to contribute to a company, an employer, a role, society? That's crazy. And so let's look at those artifacts of potential and ability to do things and then try to de-risk it for the managers that are hiring so that they don't get a slap on the wrist when something doesn't work. Because frankly, the diplomas and degrees, at best, they have a 50% hit rate, which ain't that good already.
I love what you're talking about, the de-risking. I think it's such an interesting approach because one of the things that I hear from employers is that there is risk. There's risk in hiring someone that didn't go the 4-year degree program. But here's where I think that we can de-risk this, and this is where I think we have to have deeper conversations, is right now with GED, we have 130 employers that are right now paying for their employees to earn their GED credential. And here's what we know is that the number one reason that a GED learner gets their GED is because they want to make their family and friends proud. The number one reason that holds them back is fear of failure. Mm-hmm. And what we know based upon the 130 employers that we have is that once a GED learner earns that credential and the employer has paid for it and they've invested and they've been in their corner when maybe they had a bad day, had a tough time juggling life, kids, job, all the things that people have on their plate, is that that learner, that employee is now forever vetted to that employer. So not only are they dedicated to the employer, they're now talking about that employer to their family and to their friends and talking about what investment that employer made in them. And you want to talk about de-risking? De-risking comes down to when you have employees that understand that you have their back at every stage of their career, and you're also there for them at the toughest times. And so, with all that being said, I feel that there's a sense of urgency in the market today with our employers, that if we as employers don't start acting differently and don't start doing things differently, that we're all going to be in a world of, I don't want to use the word hurt, but there's going to be lots of challenges out there. So why do you, where you sit, feel that there's a sense of urgency for employers to start doing things different?
Yeah, I think there's a few forces that are coming together. Number one, um, it's obvious, right? We said it earlier, but they have unfilled roles that they can't find talent for through the traditional channels. And they have business objectives riding on filling those talent. Like the most important thing in a company, we know is the human capital that works in it. And so if you can't find the right people to help you make progress as a business, as a company, as an organization, that's creating challenges. And we know that there's two openings for every person looking for a job, right? That's almost unprecedented in our economy. Even with fears of a downturn right now, that's been pretty like a pretty static underlying dynamic of the current economy. We know with the baby boomers retiring, that dynamic is likely only to increase. So you got to find talent. Second, they're not coming through traditional channels. We know people are voting with their feet and saying, we are not going, a smaller percentage is going to college. Many people are saying that finishing high school is not the right pathway for them. They're looking for alternatives. We know that enrollments in public school districts, particularly in urban areas where a lot of the jobs are declining. And so that's a second force. And then I think a third force is frankly, and Gene Eddy of ASA said this to me once, which was, we tell people that graduating high school, going to college, that's the least risky path. It's actually not really true because like that could be mountains of student debt. You might not complete, in which case you're not going to have a clear job on the other side of that. And you don't get the bump in wages because you don't have the diploma or the degree or whatever it is. And so I think that's the third piece of this, which is companies looking at this and saying like, actually asking someone to lever up and take a lot of debt and go through the traditional channels, maybe that's risky because that is putting them in a position that creates a cost in an ongoing way in their lives. It means the employer now has to pay a certain salary, right, to help them finance that. Maybe this isn't the right pathway, and helping someone earn the GED credential or frankly other credentials that are out there in the market that have a real assessment behind them makes more sense because it's actually a symbol of what you can do something, right? It's not sort of left to the imagination of like, I know you did the 4 years, but did you actually learn what you said? We don't know. And I guess the fourth thing is employers and colleges for that matter, they're pretty clear through their actions that like they don't believe the grades being given out. So we need third party objective measures of what you know and can do. And I think those are all reasons for urgency, for looking for alternatives to the quote unquote traditional pathways.
Yeah, it's such a good point about the grade system. We talk about, someone getting a grade, a passing grade, and does it really equal a skill set versus a GED learner who's had life circumstances thrown at them, overcome obstacles, and continue to show up, continue to come and work multiple jobs, have life challenges. So it's a really good comparison. For me, one of the things out there, and again, I saw some of your podcasts and some of the articles that you write. One of the factors that's hitting all of us today is AI. And for a GED learner, AI still is one of those, it's an intimidating, yet it's a benefit to them, in the ways that they study, in the way that they can research. What I love about AI for our GED learners is it helps remove shame. Maybe something they want to ask a chat bot that they wouldn't ask someone else because they are embarrassed to ask. And so I'd love to get your perspective on how you think AI will impact the future of education, hiring, and then how we look at skills.
Yeah, it's such a good question, and there's a lot of ways you can unpack it. But I just want to first say I think your observation is a big one, which is I'm working through this program to get the GED, and it takes away, fear of failure being the barrier to completing. fear of looking silly or like I don't know or I don't have the answers, right, is also in having that AI assistant just to nudge me in the right direction, I think is pretty important. But frankly, that's how work is going to be done. And I think what we're seeing in the research, it's early, but that the people who benefit the most from having an AI agent or companion of some sort alongside them are not your high performers, but frankly, everyone else, because it lifts the floor in a meaningful way. It gives them an assistant to, I'm going to proofread, what you wrote. Or I was talking to someone the other day and they said, oh yeah, I have it used. I have it create the first draft of any marketing I put out there, not because I'm going to use what the AI gives me. I'm going to fill in my own things, but I love the structure it gives me. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great way to communicate. Right. And so I think that's what we're going to see, is that AI is going to be this tool that allows us all to create and communicate far more clearly and better. And it's not going to be a substitute in my mind. It's going to be really that complementary companion that, it's not going to be a magic bullet that you just sort of like, it does all the work or something like that. No, it's going to be something that we learn to interact with and improve upon and not trust, but use our expertise to enhance the products that we're able to do. And they always say technology isn't replacing an individual, but the individual plus technology is replacing the individual who doesn't use the technology. And I think that's what we're seeing. I suspect that's what we'll see come to fore over time. And it's a great boost. I mean, you talked about it. Like the GED is a great sign of perseverance and grit, which are things I want in an employee, right? That's what I want. Someone who's going to be solution oriented and who's going to figure it out. And if they can use AI as a way to help them navigate to building the skills that they want to show, I think that's the way we're going to be working in the future. So we might as well learn how to do it in education too.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And I think, all of us are a little bit scared. I don't know if we all talk about it publicly, but AI is still a little scary because it's this unknown. And I think all of us recognize that it's got significant value in our day-to-day jobs, in our lives. But I think we have to just also start being transparent, that it's okay to not understand it. It's okay to use it when you don't know how to do something. It's okay to use it as a substitute. And I think sometimes we just get fearful of what it is versus really excited about what it can do for each and every one of us in the future. So
I
I
think
think
it's
that's
great.
beautiful.
Yeah, just to stay with it for just 2 seconds. Like in my class, I teach at the ed school at Harvard. And some people are sort of nervous about the AI, and I totally get it. And if it means, 30 crystal clear papers coming into me because they've had a great editor alongside them, great, right? Like then they've created something better. I'm super skeptical that the AI is going to write the paper in a way that makes the grade by itself. So I tell them that. And if you want to do that, fine, but it's not going to result in what you want out of this. And it's not going to result in the final product either.
Yeah, that's good. That's so good. Okay, good. Well, as I was researching you and I was looking at all the things that you do, one of the things that I read about was your recent book on job moves. And you talk about 9 steps in making progress of your career. And, there's the 9 steps. I was looking at all of them. I'd love to get your thoughts on, if I'm a GED learner and I'm listening, or I'm an educator and I'm listening right now, what are the, maybe not all 9, but what
Sure.
would you recommend are the really top key areas that someone looking to make a job move or a career move should focus on?
Yeah, I'll say 3. One is look at the work you do in as you're completing the GED or in your job or wherever, right? And figure out what are the activities that really drive my energy and what drains my energy. What do I and how do I know what I want more of and what do I want less of, right? We have a whole methodology for rank ordering and whatever else, but the basic idea is like over a course of a couple weeks, note what's driving your energy and what's draining it. The second thing I would say is we take the concept of, companies have balance sheets of assets and liabilities. Well, individuals do too. Our assets are our capabilities, they're our credentials, they're our skills and things of that nature. But to earn those things, they incur liabilities, not just student debt, but the time you put in, right? Things like that. And so take an honest look at your balance sheet right now of what are the assets, the skills, et cetera, that you have and your current liabilities, but then also look to like, what do you want to be able to do next as you go on this progression of your journey, and be honest, like what's it going to take on the liability side to get there, so you have an honest accounting, and it's not sort of, of course I want to learn 5 foreign languages, but it's not going to happen because the liabilities I would have to incur to do that, just it's not going to happen, right? Um, and then the third one I would say is taking those things, the skill sets that you really want to have in your next job, what you want your balance sheet to look like, and those energy drivers, leaning into the things. Figure out ways you can prototype careers or job opportunities that give you more of the things that you want, and less of the things that you don't want. And as you're prototyping, and we have a whole methodology for that, but the big thing I would say, don't think that there's going to be a perfect job. Every
Yeah.
single job has some downsides to it. Like there's
Yeah.
things you don't love about your job, there's things I don't love about my job. But say, be honest and say, okay, I know I'm going to accept, an unpredictable time because I get 6 weeks of vacation, whatever it might, like, be super clear about the trade-offs, through those prototypes, so you can take a job that helps you make progress, and the downsides on the front end.
Yes, it's fascinating that you talk about energy, because energy is one of those things for me. When I start talking about the GED learner, and I start talking about impacting people's lives, and I talk about why it's critical that all of us have an impact on someone's life. And when I think about the 40 million adults out there walking around without a high school diploma, it's painful for me to think all these young men and women out there need someone to believe in them, someone to show them the systems. We all think that all these systems out there are easy to navigate. People should know where to go. People should know how to go find something that gives them energy, and everyone should know how to look at their assets. And the bottom line is, not everyone has that. Not everyone has someone in their corner. Not everyone has the ability to navigate the systems that are set up for all of us. Not everyone even understands what a career path means and how to even go about it. So for me, I talk about it takes one person, right? It takes one person to change the life of someone. You are that person for a lot of people. You talk about education all the time. You talk about investing in education, meeting learners where they're at. And so for me, I would love to hear your perspective on why is it not just Vicki and Michael Horn talking in a podcast of why it's important? Why is it that everyone out there needs to play a role in investing in someone's life?
Yeah, well, and this is a huge part of the book as well, and you're touching on it, right? Which is fundamentally, job moves are social processes, right? We learn about opportunities from our network. We gain access to opportunities. They coach us. They recommend us. And then you pay it forward. And what we say in the book, and I think it's critical, is one, use those people around you. Yes, the people who are strongly tied to you and are in your corners, but also the people you sort of know, because they're the ones that are going to have access to opportunities you wouldn't otherwise know about. And then you need to be doing the same thing for other people. And we talk about how, and the reason is, like, if you're not doing it for others, no one's going to do it for you either. And so this is really a full circle process of, this is how we make progress, is by talking about these things. And you're completely right. Like, navigating these systems without people, good luck, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
so the way
Exactly.
you figure it out is you have someone in your corner, and then you tell someone you're in their corner, and you tell them how you worked through it. And, you connect them to someone that leads to another conversation that leads to another conversation, and boom, you have a job, right? You just never know how these things are going to go. And so I think it's making yourself available to support people, absolutely critical. And then realizing you're also going to need people to support you, uh, because that's how we make progress. It's not an individual effort.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's hard. There's a lot of people out there that don't know where to start. And I think your advice is right, is that you have to just start opening the doors And I think the bottom line is you have to open every door, even if the door doesn't really lead to a path. I think opening doors, tapping on people that maybe you don't even know, reaching out, but we all own our own path as well. So we all have to take ownership in what that is, but not be afraid to tap someone, not be afraid to reach out to a Michael or a Vicki or to a leader in your organization, just to ask them for advice and talk to them. So I think that's spot on. And then I think we all have to just give back and do more and keep the conversation open. I'm going to shift a little bit because I think what I want to tap into you is that, I look at the role that you play and you're out in the market on a regular basis. You're talking to employers, you're talking to educators, you're an educator yourself, you're talking to leaders. And for me, one of the things that I struggle with is what is the right focus? Like, what is the right focus that we should be talking about? What is the area that we should be pushing? Where should we be pushing, laying off? We've talked about the 4-year degree on, talked about it off. We've talked about skills on and off. We talked about risk. And so how is it for you when you're out there? How do you know what is the right thing to be talking about and the right areas to be talking about?
Oh boy, that's a good question. And I think it shifts over time also as we learn, right? What is, social capital, for example, that we just talked about was not
Yeah.
something I talked a lot about 5, 6 years ago. It's something I talk a ton about now because I've learned just how, obviously it was in my life, but I hadn't thought about it, but I've just learned how important it is. So I think it's a combination of, I guess, a couple things. One, at least for me personally, I try to find the thing that I, I think is really important right now, but people are maybe not pushing on hard enough. So that at least I can be a voice to
Yeah.
not just be spouting the conventional wisdom, but be trying to find that leverage point where I think people maybe are missing something. And then two, I guess what I would say is, keeping the why
Yeah.
central, right? As whatever you're talking about is, which is, obviously for you, like you're supporting millions of people who have incredible potential, but it's untapped because
Mhm.
sadly they've been excluded because of a lack of credential. You're giving them a pathway to demonstrate what they can do. And show it in a meaningful way through this alternative pathway, which frankly shouldn't be alternative. It just should be a pathway, right?
That's right. Yeah,
But
that's right.
the central why, right, is it's not like the purpose is not the diploma. The purpose is not college. The purpose is not this. The purpose is that so we allow people to live lives of dignity and purpose, right? And so we untap that in a variety of ways. And I think keeping that central why front and center in anything you're talking about. I don't know if I'm ducking the question, but like to me, that's whatever you're talking about, having the why front and center is important because, look, I'm a part of the solution. None of us are a silver bullet. But if we have our why, we can say, oh, I see. This is how that fits in. And this is what I'm talking about. And this is how this fits in. And this is how they work together.
Yeah, I don't think you're ducking the question. In fact, I think what I love about your answer is core to who we are at GED, which is how can you do the wrong thing if you have the learner at the center of everything that you're doing?
Yeah.
If the learner and the human capital side sits and we all focus on the right thing versus the documented thing or the thing that is the shiny object at the time, to me, it's the investment in the human side of all of this is what makes sense. And I think that's what you're saying is the why has to be what's the right thing to do. And then how do we make sure that we can all execute that and how can we all come together on that why? So I think that's right. And it kind of ties to, again, we've talked a little bit about this and we go back and forth, is that in the market, in you being an educator, even at Harvard, we none of us want to give up on the 4-year degree. All of us say, yep, there's value in the 4-year degree. And in fact, there's some professions that thank goodness there's a 4-year degree. There's,
Sure.
healthcare. There's lots of degrees out there that we want people to go through really focused curriculum. And we also recognize that the world's shifting and we're seeing lots of new job openings. In fact, we have openings in the blue collar field. We know that if we don't start filling those, we know that the baby boomers are retiring and we're not going to have enough folks. We know that there's lots of green energy jobs out there. how are we going to get electric car stations in? How are we going to get ready for all of the, the green energy work that's out in the market? And so for me, one of the, again, areas that I love to focus on is how do we look for other talent out there? And so I'd love to get your perspective on how do we start opening these doors to all of these careers that may not be tied to the 4-year degree, could have a 4-year degree on the heels of it, but these new markets, emerging markets, and even old markets, meaning jobs that have always been out there that we just haven't filled.
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess I have two thoughts. One, personally, I think rather than like a high school curriculum of, 4 years of math, 4 years of English language arts, et cetera, sort of the compliance driven, right? I'd much rather a set of experiences that exposes individuals to a variety of things that are out there. So A, they can learn what's even possible, but B, they can start to say, oh, wow, I want more of that, less of this, right? I want more of that, less. It's about that energy. Where do I derive it? Where does it consistent with my strengths? And what really excites me? And then secondly, I think as you start to then dig into preparation for any field, someone said to me the other day, we were having coffee and they made the observation that one way to do preparation for a career, say on that green energy job, right, is
Yeah.
say you're doing solar panel installation.
Mm-hmm.
We could just teach people how to install solar panels. But then like we haven't given them a broader set of skills that can
Right.
transfer to a variety of things connected to that pathway. And we sort of limited them just to installing. But
Yep.
if our purpose in education is like, okay, we're going to teach you how to install, but we're going to show you how it connects to physics and electricity and engineering and how these things different comes together, all of a sudden we've given you a basket of skills that's going to open up a variety of different pathways that you can go chase down and have been opened up to you, right? And so
Yeah.
I think that's the second thing, which is in my mind, I think sometimes educators get squeamish when we connect the world to careers and
Mm-hmm.
jobs,
Yeah.
which I think is incorrect. But I think equally so, we can't be overly narrow or reductivist about like, oh, we're just training you to do this. I will tell you, like when an HVAC technician, which are in short supply and are a
Yes.
terrific
Yes.
career and incredibly high tech, when someone comes to me with like, a very narrow view of HVAC, like, oh, I look at the FAQ and I do this, tends to get to the wrong solution when they're fixing my air conditioning. When they have a much deeper understanding of how the systems work,
Mm-hmm.
they're able to ask questions and do trouble. Like the solution is so much better, and I'm willing to pay for that, right?
Exactly.
Um,
That's
and
right.
so I
Yeah.
think that's sort of how I think about it.
It's so good. Basket of skills. That's what I took away from that is that we have to, it's more than just the skill at hand. It has to be the full basket. I love that. Okay. So we talked about our whys. We talked about learners. And one question that I love to ask our guests is for me, it's always that one educator or that one teacher, maybe even that
Mm.
one leader that made a difference in each of our lives. And I'd love for you to share if you have someone in your journey that you want to call out, an educator or a leader that really impacted your why.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I've been fortunate along the way, from my parents as the first teacher, right, to a bunch of educators throughout. But I think it's undeniable that Clayton Christensen had that impact on me in an incredibly profound way, from the way I see the world through a set of theories around innovation. To ultimately instilling a mission statement in me of how can I make sure that every single individual has the opportunity to build passions, fulfill potential, and live a life of purpose. That would have never been my mission statement when I went to Harvard Business School originally, but it was, it became that through the work with him. And frankly, I mean, he was an unbelievable educator, who taught not through telling you, but helping you learn how to think through his questions and stories. And it was just obviously completely changed my life. And 20 years later, here I am
Here we
still
are.
cranking away. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. So, so good. Okay. Well, this was, I love hearing the stories of the impact. And you're right, all of us have leaders along the way and people that have impacted, but it sounds like he was pretty special and continues to be special in your life. So, Michael, I love to give our guests the last word. What do you want to say, or what do you want to cover maybe that we didn't cover?
Well, I think we've covered a lot of big points. I guess the only thing I would say is what you said, which is ultimately, if we have the individual learner at our interests and front and center, we're going to figure out the right thing. And our loyalties should not be to the systems and structures that we have historically had, but instead to the individuals and the progress that they are trying to make in their own lives, and how can we support them. And the reality is there's going to be a multiplicity of paths and support structures to help those individuals. But if we keep that individual at the heart of our why, I think we can build a set of those, multiplicity of those, right? That doesn't discriminate, that encourages and invites all individuals to make progress on their terms.
Oh, very good. Very good. Thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure. I feel like you and I could talk for hours
I
about
feel like I
this.
can learn a lot from you, so thank
I
you.
know we could learn a lot from each other, but thank you for doing this, and thank you for living a life of purpose, and for all that you do to talk about education and again the learner, and really to employers and to all of everyone that's listening who really can make an impact. And I also want to thank the learners that are listening, and for the learners that showed up, and for all the educators that are also the why to so many learners and changing lives. And again, I say it every show, but be the one person. Be the one person that invests in someone else's life. Be the one person that shows up maybe when you don't feel like showing up, and be brave and push yourself. But again, thank you to Michael. Thanks for joining, and please tune in to our next podcast on Education Unplugged. Thank you, and stay well.